Hello, everyone. My name is Cassidy Diamond. I am the Associate Director of Public Programs and Events here at the IDA. Thank you for joining us for this conversation around Showtime's Cusp, moderated by Vox's Alissa Wilkinson. Before we get started, I would like to offer a brief land acknowledgement. Coming to you today from Chicago, which is on the unceded land of the Potawatomi people, who have been stewards of this land for generations. And as we wrap up this series, I would like to thank, as always, our media sponsor, IndieWire, for their support. And you can find all of our previous recordings on our website at www.documentary.org/screening-series. And I've said it here and there, but thank you all, as always, to Andrea Lust for her ASL interpretation. Always great to see you. And as we wrap up this series, a big thanks from everyone at IDA. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Alissa to get us started.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm so delighted to talk about Cusp with Isabel Bethencourt and Parker Hill, who are co-directors and co-cinematographers, I guess, which is maybe not something that we always hear. So it's really exciting to talk to you about your process and also about this wonderful film. Could you start out by just talking about where this came from? Obviously, you know, I think coming of age documentaries and films about teenagers are somewhat common, but this has a totally different feel to it. So how did you get started with this project?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for chatting with us about the film. Izzy, you got this.
Yeah, so Parker and I met at NYU as film students, and we're also both photographers, and we were on a road trip in the summer, in the middle of the summer, from Montana to Texas. And we were getting gas the last night of our road trip, and this pickup truck pulled up next to us at like 2:30 in the morning. And these girls like jumped out of the car, and they were running around, and they were barefoot, and they were kind of blasting music and screaming at each other. And we were like, they seem insane. Like, we should talk to them and say, hey. So we're like, hey guys, like, you know, this is funny, but we're photographers from New York. Could we take your photo? And they were like, sure. And then we kind of got to talking, and they wound up inviting us back to their friend's house, and it sort of all spiraled from there. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, we had this like incredible night talking to a group of girls and guys as well. And they all just had like so much to say about like what it was like to be them, what it was like to be from where they're from. And we just got along so well and found them so exciting. Like they were just like a burst of like youthful freedom. And so we stayed in touch, and we hit them up to go back and shot what we thought was going to be a short doc, and then just really loved being there and expanded it to a feature.
I think that's so like unusual for people. Often there's more of a gap between, you know, you kind of hear about a story and you want to go make it, or you kind of know about a phenomenon and you're kind of interested in capturing it. Would you say that your interest is sort of based on like feeling close to their age, more or less, or was it seeing something different than maybe the world that you felt like you were living in at the time?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think on the whole road trip, we were like fascinated with this idea of like American teenagers in the summer, and like this idea of the American experience as a teenager. And I think so much of that is most likely from like movies. You know, it's not, it's an idea, and we were interested in like talking to real kids and like trying to understand one step further and then another step further of like what it actually means. And, you know, part of the whole process of making this film was absolutely learning, you know, some of the realities, darker realities of what it's like to, you know, it's not just all pickup trucks and backroading and having a blast. Like, you know, there's a lot going on beneath the surface that we learned.
Yeah, you know, it sort of feels like they're living, you know, they're familiar with cameras, right? They've been surrounded by cameras. So have you. I mean, so have I to an extent, but there's something different about kind of growing up where you're always being surrounded by cameras. You're used to seeing your your own face in images. How did they react when you brought up the idea, you know, beyond just being agreeable? What was their reticence? Were they interested? Did they kind of try to manage their own, you know, their own image on screen? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because it wasn't a super unusual question. Since we met them as photographers, they like knew that that was who we were generally. And then when we brought up like, oh, can we come film? Like, we're really just interested in hearing what you guys have to say. We want to learn what it's like to be you. They were all like, why us? Like, we're like kind of boring and
They're
we don't
like,
do
here,
much.
really? It's
Yeah,
the middle
they're-
of nowhere.
They're like, you have the wrong kids. We're, you know, we're not meant to be in a documentary. And we were like, no, that's exactly, you
What
know,
we wanna
what
look
we want to
at.
look at, because you guys are sort of, you know, indicative of what's happening in many small towns in America. And it just is, you know, it was super fun and we got along so well that we just kept wanting to follow. So at first they were like a little confused as to why we were interested, but they were all really down and we kind of just had a lot of fun together.
Yeah, and then they kind of also like got to be the expert to us of what it was like to be them. So like we were so fascinated with like really mundane stuff. They're like, really? Like, we're just going to the river. We're like, yeah, but we're going to the river, you know? And so I think like our just like endless enthusiasm also put them not just at ease, but like they got to show us around, and that was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sort of like they were hosts to a world that they were welcoming you into.
Exactly.
Which is something that, you know, teenagers, especially like teenagers in a small town, probably don't actually get that experience that much, but here you are.
Yeah.
And you feel special when somebody puts a camera on you. There have been a lot of docs about teenagers in the past 2 years. I just feel like I'm writing about an endless stream of them myself. And this one really does stand out to me and to lots of other people for a variety of reasons. But one of them is the look of it. Like, it's beautiful. The light is beautiful. As soon as I found out that you two were photographers, it made sense in a way. But I'm curious about just the techniques of getting that on film. Like, how did you make a beautiful documentary? And was that something you were thinking about going into it, or is it the natural result of a process?
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
yeah.
I think, you know, we were so inspired by the natural beauty of Texas. We really wanted it to feel like like a character and like an important presence in their lives, because the freedom and the excitement and the fun of summer is so gorgeous, and the sunsets are so beautiful, and like the golden buttery sunlight is so amazing. And so from the start, we both had a lot of conversations about how to best do that.
Yeah. And I mean, it was also so important to us to figure out how to show, you know, that age. It's all, even while you're a teenager, you're nostalgic for like last weekend. And we really wanted the way it was shot to feel like a memory and to have people remember their youth, you know, like sticking your head out the window while like your hair's in the wind, and really wanted like the way it was shot to help people connect to the situation, even if you're from a different place or, you know, went through some different things. And we really like wanted the richness and the vibrance as like this juxtaposition also to some of the darker realities that these girls and teenagers are facing. You know, we've definitely seen our fair share of docs that show certain elements of darkness or bleakness very plainly. And I think that when you're experiencing these things, they don't necessarily feel like, when you're a kid, I mean, anything that you go through is such a huge percentage of the amount you've been alive, that like your world is ending, or like it's still beautiful, or like I'm on my roof and the sun is setting, but I feel like claustrophobic. How do we show that, you know? And so it was really like a conscious part of the process for us of like, how do we show how they feel?
Mm-hmm. Did you find yourself looking for moments that would look especially good? Like, you know, you mentioned the river, but I'm wondering, I mean, the light, I have been thinking about the light for literally months now. And of course you get a lot of light during the summer, and that's one benefit of shooting during the summer. But were there things where you were like, this is going to look great and we want to make sure we're there for it?
Yeah, I mean, every now and then there's a thing where it's like, hey guys, like let's go hang out outside. It's beautiful. Like,
Texas in the summer is like 110 degrees.
Yeah.
And air conditioning is inside, but sunlight is outside. So there are a couple times where, you negotiate having a conversation outside instead of inside.
And they learn, they'd be like, oh, the sun's setting, like we should probably go outside because Parker and Izzy want to
I'm like incredibly fascinated with Twilight, like photographically. I just love that time of day. So they quickly knew, like sometimes they'll like text us photos being like, this was such a Parker sunset and something like that. So,
that's awesome. So that actually brings me to a question about them and how they thought of their part in the film. Like, did you see a shift in that? Did you see them starting to think of themselves as like collaborators or something like that as it went along? Are they thinking of themselves as stars or subjects, or how did you, I mean, obviously only they really know, but how did you kind of observe them over that time?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think like because it was our first feature, we didn't really approach the process with like, we didn't really have language like that, it wasn't like, hey, subject, and so in terms of like it was really just a growing and developing friendship and relationship throughout the process. And through even just the direction of interviews, we interviewed all of them a lot, even though the film ended up being a little more observational and vérité. And I feel like the interviews really was like the biggest collaboration, not only about using lines for voiceover, but like the girls really helped us like work out our understanding of these topics and of how they feel about them. And so they've been like our experts the whole time, I guess. Yeah,
that's a really good, they're sort of the experts in it. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you.
It just grew so organically. I think it was sort of like we were helping each other along the path of making a first doc, because it was new to both of us, but it was also something that we got to share together.
Yeah, they'd be like, is this how it normally goes? And we're like, I mean,
I don't know.
it's your first doc's our first doc, so yeah.
Kind of a good place to be in, just the lack of expectations and maybe pressure, but different kind of pressure than other people might feel, especially when you're working with a relatively unpredictable group of people, because teens will do whatever they feel like doing. You were talking about kind of the dark stuff, obviously, that they're dealing with. And I think something that's striking, about documentary, something that documentary can do is really show us how these sort of sometimes abstract ideas to some people of things like sexual assault, consent, how teenagers think about where those things are, they're really embodied in their conversations. And suddenly certain things become very obvious, maybe that people wouldn't necessarily have known if they were just reading a newspaper article or watching a more journalistic documentary or something like that. So can you talk about when those topics started coming up and how you kind of felt about it and decided to proceed with those things?
Yeah, it was definitely, it's funny, along the road, we talk a lot about what it means for something to be normal. And I think we realized a couple months into filming that every girl we spoke to had some kind of non-consensual experience, but it did take us a while to understand that, because the way they spoke about it was so plain. And so like we say that they said it with an asterisk. They'd be like, oh, well, that wasn't real. He was my boyfriend, or
that was my fault.
It was my fault. I didn't say anything.
They explained it away a little bit.
Yeah. And we were so in the mode of like listening to them and following their lead and taking their word for stuff. And then at some point we were like, wait a second, like this is a really normal experience. And it's actually happening to most girls that we've been talking to. And at some point we asked Autumn, like, wait, how many of your friends have had, a non-consensual experience? She goes, oh, 100%. We were like, really? Like, it was so shocking. Even though we had all these conversations, we realized that that's what it is to be normal. It's we were in the room and it didn't feel that weird for them to say certain things. And then until you turn around and look at it and look at footage and talk to them again, that we started to understand the real gravity of it.
Yeah, looking at footage was really a huge, like, crucial part of the process. It was as early as our first trip that we there's a scene in the film that's from our first trip where we were at a party, and it was like one of the first times it was just casually brought up, like kids are talking and these guys are like, well, they were both intoxicated and it's not rape if they're both intoxicated. And it's one of those, at a party, like, you know, conversation kind of moves a mile a minute. And it wasn't really until we were home where we're like digesting all this footage and watching it that we're like, wait, I have a follow-up. Like, what? You know, and so it was really a process of like us, you know, going to another trip and then asking some of the girls about these things. And then once they started sharing with us their experiences, it was like every trip kind of like led us to, like, we would just come back and watch everything and like understand it, write down questions, and then go back and kind of learn more. So it was really like, there was never like a moment where we were like hit all at once with this information. It was like trying to understand it because yeah, they just live with it. So they don't even know to bring it up. And we're like asking about it and they're like, oh, that's like an inherent part of growing up.
Which is like hard to encounter, especially if you're a person who's thought about this and tried to like develop language and a consciousness around how do we talk about this and how should we not talk about this, and then you kind of stumble upon this being almost in built in them from the beginning, and you do get the sense that this is a generational trauma, like it just keeps carrying from generation to generation, which is very powerful. When you were thinking about this in terms of, you know, the parents, there are parents in the film, right? I mean, their kids are basically talking about crimes that have been committed. Like, where do you land as a documentarian? What's your place in that as you're working on the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think our cardinal rule was always to lead from the girl's perspective and to look at every scene and every situation as like, well, how does it feel to be her right now at this party or having this conversation or talking about this relationship or whatever it was. And I think the parents, it was a similar journey in the edit too, where it was like, well, how does it feel like to be the teenager in this relationship? Yeah.
Yeah. And then the process of finishing this film also was like, it's almost not separate, but, you know, you're filming everything, you're asking questions, but then when you're editing, everything from obviously making sure we're tied up legally, but also like getting everyone, having them be okay with what we put in the film. And so it was like almost a separate, it happened in two stages. It's like you film and then those conversations really start about, you know, what people are comfortable with us using and comfortable with other people knowing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Were there any points at which you faced the temptation to step in, to like become involved in the narrative? And if so, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, it never really came up. I mean, so many of the stories that were shared with us were all happened in the past. And the nature of how this film was made was like the first trip we were there, we were friends with, or we were following like boys and girls alike. And then the more that we learned what was going on, we stopped, or we focused in more on a group of girls. And like, once we knew what was going on or knew what we knew, like we were never in the same rooms again. And so it was like an interesting pairing, because it's like the whole process of making this was like capturing certain parties, certain sets of footage, and then like having the girls help us make sense of it and make sense of like what it must feel like to be in rooms like that. But nothing ever unfolded in front of us that needed intervention or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think one of the challenges, as someone who doesn't make documentaries but certainly watches them, I think one of the challenges with this has to be, or maybe it's the exciting part, that you say you approach a group of teenagers, you say, we'd really be interested in making a film with you. You have no idea what the end result is going to be. Like, someone could, just disappear halfway through, like fights you have no idea what the arc of the story is actually going to turn out to be. And I was actually kind of shocked when I got to the end of the movie and realized this was only one summer. Like, it feels like an entire lifetime occurs in this summer. And then you think about when you were a teenager, how it felt the same way. You just felt like you were a completely different person when you went back to school in the fall, even if you're obviously not. So
summer days are like dog years. You age so much. It's crazy.
Yeah. And you just kind of live them, and they're long and languid, but you really gave the film that feeling. And so I really was like, oh my goodness, this feels like everything happened in this one summer. But when you're approaching something that is essentially open-ended as far as the narrative, the themes, all of those things, What's the process of looking for the story inside of this sort of huge pile of everything? Are you looking for it while you're shooting? How much of it is sort of during production? How much of it is in post-production? How do you two talk to one another about what you're seeing? What is that process like?
Yeah. I mean, during shooting, I think we're definitely, it's funny because it is so open-ended and you are so present and you go into every trip being open-minded for anything to happen. And in the back of your head, you're like, okay, do I have enough scenes, of this girl?
Do I have
this
her
character?
doing something? Do I have her,
do we need her to like learn how to, if she just learned how to drive, should we get her driving to school or, whatever it is. And I think we knew that we wanted to film only in the summer because of the excitement and the energy, the freedom and the like teenage, I feel like the essence of teenagehood of who you really are is in the summer. Cause in school, you're basically, in a kind of
day job
prison. Yeah. And so we knew going along, we're okay, the summer's coming to a close. Like, what do we have of each girl? What do we still need? What should we look out for? Who should we maybe spend a little more time with when we go back? And so it was definitely
a process. It was like an ongoing conversation.
Grew so much in the edit too, which Parker can speak to as our editor.
Well, but I mean, also in general, like approaching the whole thing, we kind of early on had conversations about not wanting to follow them for 4 years or 8 years, not wanting to show change over time. Like we didn't want time to be the story. We really wanted to see, like, can you show a snapshot of what someone's like at this moment in time, like almost like a yearbook of a time in your life where these are your opinions on what you're going through. This is how it feels. This is like the amount of information or amount of maturity or growth you have to like make your own decisions at this moment. And it was hard because, we're going back becomes like addictive. You just want to keep, when you have problems in the edit, the grass is always greener on the next hard drive. So you're just like, let's get more, but when we knew that, we knew going back to school was always like going to be a thing. And so we filmed that. And then we did end up doing a couple of pickup trips after that, just to get certain things. But while filming, we knew that school was going to be the thing. So we made sure we captured it to have that option in the edit.
Yeah. And you just, I can imagine it must be really wild to see themes kind of pop out at you, or like pattern recognition happens, like where it almost raises off the screen. You're like, oh my goodness. Were there any like unexpected motifs or patterns that you started to see as you were working your way through the footage that you hadn't seen at all while you were on the ground shooting, but they kind of jumped out at you?
That's a great question, Alissa.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things that we found in the edit with the help of one of our consulting editors, Katrina Taylor, was the role of animals. We realized somewhere in the edit that we had all these shots of animals that we really loved. And like Autumn has a cat that she adores, and Brittany had these puppies that she went to go see with her boyfriend, and Lonnie has these dogs at her house, and there were flies and deer, and we were just like, wow, we're like, we don't know what to do with these things, but we love these shots and they're so meaningful to the girls.
Yeah, they care for that. Like they, in some ways, show a lot of love and care to animals. I think maybe in a way where they wish people were taking care of them that way, but like they have a lot of love to give, which I kind of came through a lot with the animals.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and so that was one of the things that we found where we were like, oh wait, we have like 20 shots of animals that are amazing, and we want to figure out where to use them. And so they often became like little metaphor shots or transition or beats where you need to think about something for a minute. Yeah.
And then, I mean, I guess in general, as we shot this film with a very small footprint, it was just Izzy and I, we were the only two people really ever down there. And so because of that flexibility, we really had the opportunity to like learn a lot from our footage, learn from every trip, and then go back and maybe try again, everything from like getting a smoother shot of the main stretch of road, but also to like, there were certain things that did stand out to us that we then like wanted to go ask about or wanted to figure out how to show. Cause there are so many parts of the way these girls live their lives, the way they talk about what they've been through, that is so normal. So if you don't, like, if you blink, you can miss it. And so we were like, how do we, like not slow time, but whether you through sound design or, through certain things, like how do we bring your attention to really feeling the gravity, even if they're about to change the topic and say, are you going to a party tomorrow? You know, like when and how can we really like stretch time and just have you really sit and hear what they're saying and hear that that's something real and worth stopping and paying attention to.
Yeah, otherwise it can just completely blow by you.
They'll say something and then they'll be like, oh, pass the Dr. Pepper. We're like, oh, follow up. They don't really, you know, these, as you said earlier, teenagers do whatever they want, and you're not going to get their attention back if they've already moved on.
You mentioned sound design, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of sound design in the film and how you approached it.
Yeah. I mean, I think like color, it was definitely something that we wanted to take from Texas. Like the feeling of a summer night is so based in sound, you know, and as well as image. And so that was something that we really leaned on heavily. And there's a few times where we would bring in some crickets or something that we had recorded as wild tone while in the field. And then we worked with a great sound designer, Chris Foster, who helped like kind of build some soundscapes for us too, when we need, you know, a subwoofer thumping in a car, or like just like the sounds of teenagehood too, of, you know, what does it sound like and not just feel like to be in these situations.
Yeah, it feels like the rare documentary that would be great in, you know, 4DX. You could watch it in a really hot room and have like crickets in your ears, bump you down the road when you're in the car. It'd be great. Can you, we've alluded to this a little bit, but I'm always really interested in how filmmakers who work as a team work together. Can you talk a little bit about that for you? Like sort of who does what, who sort of fills what role in that relationship between the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing about a doc is like there are so many different parts of the process. You know, when we talk about filming, we both operated the camera, or, you know, while someone's holding the camera, the other person's holding sound. But also what was really great about this collaboration is like cinematography, for example, we both have different interests or like point of views to bring to the table. And so like, it really was a great like complementary experience of, you know, like one of us, like I'm a little more color landscape focused, and Izzy's definitely like the queen of amazing details, where like you'll see a frame and you're like she notices patterns in a way that like, yeah, you don't see it, and then when you see it framed, you're like, oh my god, that's hilarious, that's really funny, that's two phones and like, you know, jean shorts walking, and it's just ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, it was just complimentary, a lot of the process, and it was kind of great to just also have another voice of like, while someone's interviewing, you know, you're going through a process of, it's just like great to have an outside voice be like, oh, what about this thing? Or can I just like follow up with this? Yeah, and then the edit was like a whole other part of your life and brain, you know, and we started cutting this at the beginning of COVID. So it was
an intense
situation, but it was really great. I mean, very similarly to the cinematography, it's just great to have another voice in the room of like something Izzy will find interesting in the footage, being like, I don't know what to do with this yet, but like, isn't this a cool shot? And then I've been like playing with something with birds, and I'm like, yeah, what if we do a thing, you know? And so it's been really nice to have someone. I mean, also it's like we're the only two people that have been there like 100% of the time. And so even though we've worked with incredible consulting editors and our supervising editor, Fiona Otway, there definitely is like a shared language, you know, like when was that thing that Brittany said about, you know, whatever, oh, there's day 12 on the stairs. Okay, great. You know, it's just, it's been a process, but it's been great.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, when the days are so long and it was just the two of us down there, like not only filming and doing sound, and then we would go back to the motel and talk for 3 hours about what we had filmed that day, or what we thought any of it meant, or what the story was going to be. And I think, you know, having someone else in the room while you're interviewing to listen to the conversation and think of questions that maybe are down a different path, or, you know, if I'm tight filming, you know, Alani for a second, Parker could be, be like, oh, there's a really great wide from outside the door, and it's like, oh, awesome, like I hadn't even thought of that. And so having two people on it, and also when the days are so long, you can be like, this is so heavy, please take it, like please shoot.
There was this one, we were at one huge bonfire ranch party, and Izzy was mixing sound that night and I was filming, and she comes over to me. We had a couple of girls loved, and they're in different parts of a party where
They're
like
so loud.
It's the type of party where like there's there was one song over here from someone's car and then a speaker over here. And she comes to me and she's like, I can't pay attention, because like your headphones have both lavs and a shotgun. And she's like, I have no idea where I am.
Like, I don't know where anybody is.
I was like, you want to switch? She's like, yeah, please. So
when your brain wiring is just exploding all over the place, it's good to have someone be like, breathe, I'll take this. Yeah.
And it's a lot of trust too. I mean, I think there were times when Parker would be like, I need like 3 days alone to edit this thing, and just trust me. I'd be like, all right, I'll see you in 3 days, and then she'd come back with this like incredible sequence of the birds and the, and the girls doing we call them the talking heads after the party, where they are each sharing in a row. And it's like, oh my God, this is genius. Like, so I think it really is built too on a trust.
So do you feel, well, I kind of have two versions of this question. I'll ask one first, which is obviously, this is a great accomplishment for a debut film, but what kinds of things did you learn about filmmaking specifically coming, through this process that you didn't even realize you were going to learn when you started?
What a huge question. Wow, yeah. I mean, well, the short answer is, so much. Like, this was like going to grad school. You're learning so much about EQ of certain lavs and sound, like on a technical level, on an exposure level. But I feel like we learned so much about story and so much about people, and like, how do you show, it's such an interesting concept of, in a doc you're shooting and then you're writing it later to, when you edit, versus a script. And it's so interesting to be like, there's a fact, I know this fact is true. How do I show it? Is it worth showing? Does it help you to know something else about someone? And it's hard. It's hard too, because, for a story like this, it was so important to us to have the girls come across as like just great, hilarious, relatable girls, even though a lot of their story is darker and more intense. And how do we make enough time? How do you pick vérité scenes, pick interview lines that show personality, even though you're on this giant story journey? And I feel like we learned so much. I'm blanking on specific lessons.
And I think too, especially when it comes to documentary, the weight of the responsibility of making a film, I think, is so big. And it's something we were constantly kind of reevaluating and having conversations with the girls and the families, and like talking to each other about, okay, like, what does it really mean to make a movie about a real person in their actual life, and
to put this out there.
Yeah. And how to do that like responsibly and with care and with compassion. And, that starts in interviews and it ends in the edit and after the premiere and even till now. So that was something that I think I knew was coming and I could always expect, but then the reality of it is it's
a process. See, it's still even to this moment in terms of checking in with them, because so much of this process, like we said earlier, was like, they got to be the experts on their lives, and they're telling us what's okay. They're telling us what's normal. They're telling us who they're comfortable hanging out with, who they're not. But then you have this, you have this set of footage, and it's actually, then we become the, people saying what's okay and what's not okay, what we're comfortable with, obviously in conversation with them, but like there was an added layer of responsibility that I don't think we could have known.
I don't think it until you make it.
And until you have, you see certain things put together and you start to understand, how is that person going to come across? Is that true? Your allegiance to the truth as much as your allegiance to them, and everything like that.
Well, I guess that brings me to my other question, which is, what do you feel like you captured about teenagers and about what it is to be, at least them? Do you feel like you've coming away with it, you show it to audiences? What are you kind of hoping or expecting audiences to have kind of learned or experienced, or even just feel differently about now that they've seen the film?
Yeah.
It's so funny. We were talking about this last night. And on the one hand, you know, we shot so much that didn't make the film. And I'm sure this is something that it's our first time going through it. So we're just going to have to come to terms with this again and again of like, there's a part of me that's like, oh, so much more could be in it. But then at the same time, what is in it, and what we were just talking about, like, you know, what we hope knowing what's just in it and starting to like have more distance, you know, every month that we go farther from picture lock, our understanding of like, people are only going to know what we put in the cut. And what did we put in the cut again?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's two-pronged a little bit, or maybe three-pronged, where there's an element where I would love people to watch it and think about their own lives and reflect on what we were all okay with in teenagehood, no matter where you're from. Yeah. And to recognize that, you know, our conversations may have shifted in the way we talk about things that happen to young women and sexual assault and trauma, but at the core, this is still very much happening. It's still very normal. And there's, you know, I think even in, you know, more coastal communities or whatever you'd want to call it, like, this is totally happening. And
it's not happening by outliers. Like, I think something we really learned that we do hope people take away is, you know, this is not, you know, someone wearing a sweatshirt in an alley and a dark you're never going to meet again. I mean, so many times this happens to people, you know, like, it's coming from someone, you know, coming from a boyfriend. And we do hope people understand that, like, it's normal people as well. You know, it's not,
yeah. And then, you know, also that we as a culture and as a country and probably as a, you know, species are prone to, teenagehood is so filled with trauma and with suffering that's so invisible and it's so not talked about. And I think it would be amazing if people walked away more willing to talk about and have discussions with each other or their parents or other kids or other adults or whoever, you know, whoever watches it, just about that fact that we all walk around, I think, hiding so much of what has happened to us that's dark or heavy or hurts. And I think it does, you know, it is detrimental to our adulthoods. And there is strength and vulnerability. And I think if we can impart that even a little bit on people, that would be amazing. And then also if girls could watch it and, you know, feel validated in their experiences, because it is so hidden, that we would love people to feel strength and power to speak up. And, you know, even if you're from a small town, like, your story is important and it's valid and it's true. So
absolutely. I mean, it's so important to us for people to understand, like, there's elements of girlhood and complicated female characters that there's still so much more to show, and there's so many more stories to be told. And, you know, we want people to like have girls watch it and feel like, oh yeah, I'm like that. And, you know, there's so much of this process. We realized that we, like, subconsciously, instinctually, like, knew how to shoot guys. We knew how to film, like, a Texas male fixing a truck and his buddies, and they're like trading dip, and, you know, they've got dirt under their fingernails. And, like, you know, subconsciously, just through film school, through studying this stuff, you know, you know how to photograph a guy.
They're, like, immediately interesting because, like, oh, that's a character,
because it's like an idea that we've seen before. And I think so much of this was like, wait, so how do you photograph a girl? And, you know, we're just two girls that, like, we photograph stuff that we find relatable, that relates to our, you know, this is what I did with my friends when we were younger. And it's still just the beginning. We want so many other stories like this to be told with complicated female characters. And there's, I think, just so much more to see, that people can start to understand, like, when you look in a girl's eyes, that you can actually see the endless complication, the opportunity, Izzy had a phrase once about looking at photos of great American males. And she was like, you can, like, see the whole universe in his eyes. And, like, we want people to see that with girls.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for, you know, making the film and for talking about it and for all of the obvious, like, heart and brilliance that you brought to it. And thank you to everyone who's watched. Hope you enjoyed the film and the conversation. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, Alissa, and thanks, Andrea, for the interpretation.